Hello Year 10. So before I tell you what it is we're going to do today, just a quick recap of what we've been doing over the last few lessons. We've been focusing on English Language Paper 1, the posh comprehension, always based on the 19th century text, and we've looked at questions 1, 2 and 3. Now remember that questions 1 and 2 are really easy. A simple retrieval of the correct information from a text. Easy marks. The only skill required is simply you being able to read a text and locate the details that the questions ask for. Question 3 was the language and structure question, worth 6 marks, and that asks a specific question such as, how is Oliver Twist presented in this extract? Or whatever the question focus is, which obviously depends on what the exam text is. Now, that question requires you to choose a few short quotations or structural features and discuss how they present Oliver or whatever the question focus is. You could comment on verbs, adverbs, personifications, short sentence structures, repetitions, syntax, that's word order, listing, metaphors, sibilants, juxtaposition, and the many more other different language and structural features that I've hammered away at since the start of September. Now, the skills here are similar and transferable to the ones we've discussed throughout the year when reading Jekyll and Hyde and Macbeth, zooming in on small details and saying something about the effect of the technique. Now, today's lessons are going to be in 2 parts. In this morning's session, we're going to look at approaches to question 4, working collaboratively on a slides presentation, and now I expect all of you to contribute and take part with that. And then after lunch, a thrilling consolidation task asking you to write a question 4 answer using a stepped slideshow. Now, a bit of admin about question 4. It's worth 15 marks, more than the rest of the questions put together. So it's really important that we master this, particularly when you think about how narrow grade boundaries can be. Now, I'm not going to lie about the fact it is a difficult question, much more challenging than the questions that I've already recapped. So it's going to require a great deal of focus and concentration to master this. Though do not worry, because we'll obviously return to this repeatedly when we are back at school. Now, this question asks you to evaluate. So, for example, evaluate how effectively Charles Dickens shows the idea of hunger in the extract of Oliver Twist we read last time, or whatever the exam question asks. So to evaluate means to discuss how well something is done. So how successful was Charles Dickens in showing us that the boys were hungry? So remember the images of the boys polishing their bowls, of the spoons being as large as the bowls, of one of them described as wild-eyed and considering eating a young boy. If you were evaluating how well Dickens presented the idea of hunger, you would clearly say that those images were successful in portraying those ideas. Now, the question is obviously asking for your opinion in some sense, though you clearly aren't being asked to slate and hate the text, even if you do slate and hate the text in your own mind. You're largely being led to agree with the question that the text does show the idea of hunger, or whatever the question focus is. Question 4 will ask you to evaluate one of the following 4 issues in relation to the text on the exam. Now, you'll notice that we've already covered all of these in some form when looking at Jekyll and Hyde and Macbeth. 1, themes. Now, remember, a theme is kind of the underlying message of a text. Love, loneliness, poverty, duality. 2, ideas, thoughts or opinions in the text. 3, events, the key things that happen in the text or key experiences. And 4, settings, where and when things happen. Now, just a note of clarification. Remember, there is a key difference between theme and idea. Now, the two are often confused, but they are distinct. So, for example, listen carefully. In Harry Potter, you could say there is a theme of friendship running throughout the entire series. But that one way in which it is shown is through the idea that Harry, Ron and Hermione would sacrifice themselves to save each other. let's not concern ourselves too much with how to write the actual answer in this first session. And instead, let's look at a few approaches of thinking about how to evaluate a piece of text. Now, I've chosen for this task a much more modern text than the 19th century, just so that it's easily accessible and an easy route in for all of us into thinking about how to evaluate something. So listen to the text first of all. It's from a story called Captain Jones. Captain Frederick Jones stood up straight, pulling his shoulders back and his chin up so that his body looked as fearless as he wished he felt. His eyes were locked on the target ahead, refusing to let himself be distracted by the anxious mutterings of the men around him. As he waited for the whistle to signal the attack, he ran through his moves with the determined calculations of one who knew how important this raid was. A bullet flew through the air, catching Corporal James Smith in the shoulder and causing him to stumble and fall into the shell-pocked ground. Jones, just behind Smith, saw him fall and grabbed the injured soldier, hauling him to his feet. Falling in no man's land was a death sentence, and Jones refused to let one of his men die in the mud. A haunting whistle overhead chilled the air, and the scream of "Gas!" echoed across the ranks. The enemy were firing gas in an attempt to stop their attack. Jones knew that Smith would be unable to fit his own gas mask. His shoulder was too damaged. Clamping his lips shut to hold his breath, Jones lowered the injured man to the ground and began to put the mask on. The gas began to sting Jones's eyes, and he blinked furiously, trying to ignore the burning desperation of his lungs to take a breath. At last, Smith's mask was fitted securely, and Jones turned his attention to getting his own mask on, his vision now completely smeared. So that extract is nice and short and easy to manage. Now, on the slides shared with you, you will see that there are a few short extracts taken from this longer story. And we're going to evaluate together and collaboratively how bravery is shown in this extract within each of the 4 potential areas that question 4 may focus on: theme, ideas, events, and the setting. Now, what you need to do right now is to go directly to the slides presentation attached to the bottom of this instructions box and meet me there. You can write your ideas about the questions you're being asked where indicated. We can discuss via the slides, but also via the Hangout chat, and I would encourage you to use that forum as it's quick and instant. So I shall meet you there now.